There were two divisions to choose from. He decided, based on his very misinformed intelligence, that he would send the 30.
A 100-year-old Civil War photo was recently found, but when experts zoom in, they suddenly turn pale. What they saw hidden in plain sight has left historians completely speechless. "You need to tell me exactly where you found this. Right now," said Professor George Kramer, barely blinking as he leaned closer to the faded envelope on Claire's desk. Claire Donovan didn't know whether to be thrilled or terrified. "I told you," she said, swallowing hard. It was in an old trunk. No label, no name. Just tucked under a bunch of railroad bonds and a box of buttons. The trunk had been gathering dust in the attic of her family's house. At first, Claire had only set it aside because she liked the brass latch and the worn leather straps. Inside was what you'd expect. Forgotten clothes, some lace gloves, brittle letters, and a crumbling leather album. Claire had almost tossed the album aside, until she noticed one photo that didn't match the others. It was thicker, sealed in wax paper, and gave off a strange scent, like dried tobacco mixed with old glue. She waited until she'd finished cleaning before opening it, and when she finally did, she stopped breathing. There, in eerie clarity, stood President Abraham Lincoln, towering in his black frock coat and signature top hat. He was far right of the frame, just beside an empty wooden chair. To Lincoln's left stood General Ulysses S. Grant, dressed in uniform. Flanking them were several other Union officers. All stood rigid, sabers at their sides, as if caught mid-conversation, frozen in time. But what stunned her was the color. This wasn't hand-tinted or painted. It was as though someone had taken a full-color photo at the close of the Civil War. "I've never seen anything like this," Kramer muttered. He'd taught Civil War photography for 17 years at SUNY Albany and published 3 textbooks on 19th century photographic technology. "But this isn't possible," he continued, pointing at the print with trembling fingers. "Color emulsions weren't even theorized until the 1890s. And that," he pointed at the back corner, "that's albumin silver print stock. This belongs to the 1860s. The process can't support color." Claire's eyes lit up. "So, it's fake?" "No," Kramer replied, eyes narrowing. "That's what's terrifying. It's not fake." She hesitated, then asked the question she'd been holding back. "Do you think it could be valuable?" "More than valuable. If real, this would rewrite the visual history of the Civil War. The Smithsonian, the Library of Congress, hell, even the British Museum would line up to bid." Claire wasn't sure whether to feel victorious or violated. Kramer straightened his glasses. "I'm taking this to the New York Historical Society. I have colleagues with equipment that can scan this without harming it." Claire hesitated. She didn't know Kramer well beyond a few guest lectures in college and an awkward conference dinner years ago. But something in his voice sounded honest and desperate. "Fine," she said, "but I'll go with it. And I stay involved. No museums, no secrecy." He nodded. "Deal." She wrapped the photo carefully in its original wax sleeve and sealed it in an acid-free case. The next morning, Claire stepped into the archives room at the New York Historical Society, trailing behind Kramer like a nervous student. A small group of lab technicians were already waiting. Among them, Dr. Elsa Turnbaum, a forensic imaging expert, and Mason Lee, a paper conservator with a specialty in 19th century documents. As the team unsealed the protective sleeve, the tension in the room thickened. Elsa slipped on her gloves, gently adjusted the photo under a high-resolution scanner, and looked at Kramer. "Ready?" He gave a small nod. The screen lit up, displaying the image in incredible clarity. The uniforms shimmered in dark blue. Lincoln's suit appeared ink black with slight creases around the knees. You could make out dust on the officer's boots, the hem of Lincoln's pants, even the carved grain of the wooden chair. "I'm telling you," Elsa said, frowning, "this is not hand-colored. These pigments are embedded into the print itself, like early Kodachrome, but predating it by half a century." "It can't be," Mason whispered. "Albumin prints can't hold chromogenic dyes." "Yet somehow this one did," Elsa replied. As the scanning progressed, the computer read off surface data, paper stock, late 19th century formula, binding material, gum arabic, color layer, unknown organic pigment, presumably beetroot and indigo base, estimated creation date, April 1865 plus or minus 5 years. Claire blinked. So you're saying this photo was taken at the end of the Civil War? Roughly, yes, Kramer said. And if the date is accurate, it may have been taken during Lee's surrender. Her heart thumped louder. Claire took out her laptop and began matching the officer faces using a side-by-side archive tool. Grant was confirmed easily. So was General Meade. Others took more time, but matches came slowly. All except one. A slim man stood directly between Lincoln and Grant. Claire paused. That face. I've seen it before. Kramer peered over her shoulder. He's not in any records. Could be a personal aide. Maybe a civilian volunteer in uniform. Claire shook her head. He looks like my great-great-grandfather. I swear. Look. She pulled out her phone and opened a scanned copy of a Donovan family photo from 1912. A much older man stood beside a barn, holding a dog. But the facial structure, the jawline, the ears, even the sloped eyebrows, were nearly identical. Kramer squinted. You think that's him? I know it is. Claire retrieved an old letter her grandfather once showed her, written in the 1920s by William Donovan, a Civil War medic believed to have gone missing in April 1865. The letter said, "The photo of the chair was never meant to be kept. Burn it if you ever find it." That same night, Claire sat alone in her apartment, staring at her computer screen. She entered William Donovan's name into the Civil War Records database. The official file listed, Rank, Medic, 104th New York Infantry. Last seen, April 6th, 1865, near Appomattox. Status, missing in action. Final note, reported absent during final muster. So why was he in a photo dated April 9th, standing beside Abraham Lincoln? Claire emailed Kramer immediately. The next morning, she received one reply. Get to the lab now. You're going to want to see this. Claire rushed into the lab, barely noticing the hum of machines. Kramer didn't speak. He just pulled up a rarely accessed log from the War Department. There was a mention, just one, of a Donovan hand-picked by Lincoln in early April 1865. Not as a medic, but as a personal escort for sensitive movement between camps. Claire blinked. You mean like a bodyguard? More like an unofficial eyes and ears, Kramer said. Lincoln didn't trust everyone, especially in those final days. The record showed Donovan was transferred quietly out of his regiment just 3 days before Lee's surrender. No official orders, just a field note. WD, moved to shadow post per AL's request, not to be logged, no weapons drawn unless required. Claire felt dizzy. He wasn't missing. He was hidden. And suddenly, the sword made sense. Donovan wasn't there as a medic, or even as an officer. He was planted beside Lincoln, not to be seen, but to watch, and if needed, to intervene. Someone Lincoln trusted enough to stand among generals. Someone so off record, even history forgot he existed. But if he was that important, why did the family think he disappeared? Why did he ask for the photo to be destroyed? The lab stayed silent, yet the team continued examining the image for more answers. Claire, Kramer, Elsa, and Mason leaned closer over the display as Elsa slowly moved her cursor to William Donovan's jacket lapel. Wait, Elsa said. There's something sewn in here. She zoomed in with trembling fingers. Beneath a fold in Donovan's union coat, almost hidden beneath the edge of his officer's collar, was a small embroidered badge, barely the size of a fingernail. But the stitching was unmistakable. 3 letters. PEC. Kramer's voice was barely audible. Presidential Escort Committee. Elsa turned pale. That doesn't exist. Not in 1865. Not officially. Kramer shook his head slowly. There are rumors. Lincoln created a shadow group in his final weeks. Unregistered men who reported directly to him. Spies, messengers, bodyguards. Soldiers he trusted more than his cabinet. And William Donovan was one of them? Claire asked. That's not the worst part, Elsa whispered, zooming in further. Directly beneath the badge, stitched faintly in thread just one shade lighter than the jacket, was another message. It read, "Target verified. Stand until April 14th. The room froze. April 14th, the night Lincoln was assassinated. Claire stumbled back a step. Are you saying William knew? Kramer didn't answer. If that message was authentic, Donovan had been aware of a plot against Lincoln, and was either trying to prevent it or waiting for orders that never came. Worse, he may have been silenced before he could act. Claire's mind raced. That's why he disappeared. That's why he told my family to burn the photo. Because it wasn't just a historical snapshot. It was evidence of knowledge, of a covert role in Lincoln's final days. But just as the shock was setting in, Elsa spoke again. I think I figured out the color. She pulled up the spectral scans. It's not modern coloring. The pigment was embedded during development, using a hybrid method. Hand-tinted emulsions mixed with light reactive oils. Very rare. Not reproducible, but... She paused. Historical records say a small War Department team experimented with it under the president's request. Claire stared. You mean Lincoln commissioned this photo? Kramer stepped forward. He didn't want a propaganda image. He wanted a legacy image. One that told a truth, but wouldn't be understood until it needed to be. The team later uncovered a journal entry from Timothy O'Sullivan's former assistant, dated 1866, referencing a photo commissioned by the president with special chromatic treatment for archival legacy. This was that photo, and it had finally resurfaced. Mason nodded. This photo didn't just capture history, it buried a secret Lincoln took to his grave. Kramer leaned back, and someone, maybe Donovan himself, made sure it wouldn't resurface. Until now. The photo was now stored in a high-security vault under the care of the New York Historical Society. But copies, with every detail preserved, began circulating quietly among historians. Claire's decision not to sell it brought headlines. But it wasn't about publicity. It was about finishing something her great-grandfather started. Within a week, the Smithsonian reached out. The Library of Congress requested access to the high-resolution scans. But Claire declined all offers, until she found something even more shocking. Buried in the folds of the original photo album, tucked behind a weathered envelope, was a handwritten letter, addressed simply, to William, from A.L. It was dated April 10th, 1865, just 4 days before the assassination. Claire held the brittle paper in gloved hands as Kramer read aloud. My dear William, if this war taught us anything, it's that truth rarely survives the men who need it most. You were not chosen to draw your sword, but to stand visible among the ones who do. What we do with peace will test us more than what we did with war. So stand where they don't expect you. Watch who you must. And if history forgets you, let them. I won't. A.L. Claire exhaled slowly. It was real. William Donovan wasn't erased by history. He had walked straight into it, without recognition, without rank, without reward. And now, after 100 years buried in a trunk, his silent service was finally seen. A museum exhibit was created, titled, The Man Who Stood Anyway, A Forgotten Shadow of Lincoln's Final Days. In it stood a replica of the photo, a full biography of William Donovan, and a quote from Lincoln's letter printed above a replica of the chair. Some men fight with swords, others with silence. Claire stood quietly during the unveiling, watching visitors linger over the photo. She didn't need anyone to call him a hero. It was enough that people finally saw him. Not just a mystery with a sword, but a witness to the weight of history and the cost of carrying it alone. And all it took was someone finally willing to zoom in. Could a single photograph rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Civil War? And if you were the one who found it, would you have dared to look closer? Thanks for watching. Don't miss what we uncover next in history's most chilling discoveries.